Thanks.
Jim Felton from Greenberg and Bass. We talked a few moments ago about bankruptcy and how bankruptcy might not just be a helpful thing because it's necessary because of your financial situation, but also if there's business litigation going on. What about real estate litigation? I mean, this is another very real issue.
Same thing. Again, the leverage of filing a bankruptcy can affect the dispute between the parties, and if the person who's in that dispute has the option of filing a bankruptcy, that probably changes where the dispute is heard. So instead of being heard in a court of the state of California, it's heard within a bankruptcy court, which is a federal court. It may cost more money. It may cost more time. There's reasons that just the possibility alone can change the dynamics between the two parties and can also just allow for resolution.
Jim, we've talked in the past about people who might think that they're a candidate for bankruptcy, and they learn that they're not a candidate for bankruptcy. And I sometimes wonder about that person who thinks that they need the shelter of bankruptcy. They want the fresh start that bankruptcy offers, but they've learned that they're not quite there yet. And you almost feel for that person because they're not there to the point where they can access the fresh start that bankruptcy will bring them, but they're still suffering with this problem. How do you counsel that person?
It doesn't mean we can't help. It doesn't mean that we can't negotiate with their creditors for the same reasons. They may not qualify, or they may not qualify for the kind of bankruptcy that we would like to put them in, but that doesn't mean we can't go to the creditor and say, you know what, they're struggling. You should take 20 cents on the dollar, 30 cents on the dollar. That's also something that we do, and that would be in lieu of filing, and it still gets them, maybe it doesn't get them a full pass with paying zero, but if you pay 20 cents on the dollar, depending on the debt, that's not so bad.
Jim, in our conversations with Peter Stephan from the Tax Resolution Institute, we've said time and time again this tax season, don't pick up the phone and call the IRS. Don't pick up the phone and call the California Franchise Tax Board. Can we say the same thing to someone about their creditors? Don't pick up the phone and call the creditor on your own?
We have a reputation in the community for being a bankruptcy firm. When I call a creditor and they know it's me and they know it's Greenberg and Bass, they know that the debtor or the person, the client, is seeking bankruptcy help. So there's a certain legitimacy that I bring to the table so that the creditor knows that there's a potential. With that potential comes, again, leverage to try to resolve the dispute, because if they're talking to me, I'm probably telling the client, you could file.
Yeah.
Let's try to resolve it, but you could file, and that goes a long way to get things resolved as well.
What we're hearing here, folks, this afternoon, and we hear it every Sunday afternoon, is experience. That's what you're hearing from Jim Felton at Greenberg and Bass. That's what we hear from Peter Stephan at the Tax Resolution Institute. I joke that you wrote the textbook, but you really did write the textbook on resolving tax issues. If you want to meander off onto the internet and try to solve these problems with some service, I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't recommend responding to one of these commercials in the middle of the night from these fly-by-night organizations telling you they can resolve your tax problems that have just gone away. They've evaporated. They literally are not in business anymore. When it is something this sensitive, your financial future, an issue of bankruptcy, taxes, unresolved tax issues, wage garnishments, bank levies, why in the world would you leave this to just anybody? We've made the medical analogy. If you have heart disease, you're going to find the best cardiologist you can find. You're not going to scan the yellow pages and stop anywhere and call that person. It's not prudent. It's not a good idea. It's not a smart thing to do. Put yourself in the hands of folks with experience. Because I got to tell you something, Peter. When I first went to the Tax Resolution Institute, I walked in that door. I was scared to death when I got that letter. You guys put me at ease, and you dealt with my problem. And the only way, and I mean this quite sincerely, the only way you could have dealt with my situation so prudently is because you had the experience you have.
One thing you could be assured of, Brian, and I know that you saw this, only qualified, and I mean qualified tax attorneys and CPAs will handle your case at the Tax Resolution Institute, or qualified attorneys, of course, at Greenberg and Bass will handle your case. And that's extremely important. There are no associates. There may be an assistant calling you for information, but the contact with the IRS is always going to be a tax attorney or CPA. And by the way, this isn't just any CPA, because most CPAs are versed in the area of assessment, meaning they prepare returns. The returns get audited, and sometimes they get good at audits, and sometimes they don't. But those are revenue agents. We're dealing with revenue officers here, the collectors, the the people who work for the largest and most powerful collection agency in the world.
One last question for you, Peter. Stephan from the Tax Resolution Institute. We're 2 weeks out from the deadline, April 15th, for folks to file their tax returns. If somebody's listening to us this afternoon and they have unfiled returns, a couple of years previous, maybe last year, the year before, do they have to go back and deal with those unfiled previous years before they can file in the next 2 weeks for 2012?
No, they don't. What I would recommend, though, is to call the Tax Resolution Institute right away. We'll file an extension for 2012, and then we'll go back and do the returns for all the delinquent returns.
And that number is 800-658-7590. 800-658-7590. Check out the website, taxresolutioninstitute.com. It is the Institute, taxresolutioninstitute.com. Peter, Stephan, as always, thanks for spending time with us. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Jim Felton from Greenberg and Bass, thanks for all your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for joining us Sunday afternoons on The Tax Show.